Number one, lack of scientific evidence. This critique is a classic. The critique that systems like astrology or human design lack scientific evidence is rooted in Enlightenment era thinking, the rise of the orange modern worldview, as it's called in integral theory, where science was divorced from religion and all forms of transrational mysticism were relegated to the realm of superstition and magic thinking, the pre-rational. So we still live in the shadow of that paradigm. Although there's a growing stage green relativistic culture that embraces multiple ways of knowing, the mainstream still tends to dismiss anything outside empirical validation as irrational or unscientific. Because this critique is so common, many have tried to conduct academic studies on astrology. These studies often suffer from limited funding, small sample sizes, and institutional skepticism, which then becomes the very reason that they're dismissed. The sample pool was too small. Well, of course it was. The systems funding the studies are rooted in a worldview that assumes astrology is already debunked. Why would they want to put any more money into it? There are some compelling cases, however. Michael Gauquelin, a French psychologist, conducted the Mars effect study in the 1950s. He found statistical correlations between planetary positions, such as the prominence of Mars in someone's chart, and the specific professions like athletes. So Mars being aggression, war, energy, masculine energy, appearing prominently in athletics charts. So that study is still debated and obviously not universally replicated, but it raised important questions at the time. We can't deny the immense value of the scientific method. It's been a net benefit to humanity since the Enlightenment period. But we also need to recognize its limitations. Some aspects of reality are transrational. They transcend logic and empirical proof without being irrational. The double slit experiment in quantum physics is one example of this. And I'm sorry to sound like a complete new ager who's like, quantum physics, quantum healing, quantum crystals. I'm sorry, but there's kind of a reason why all the new age hippie use those words, because that experiment really ripped a hole in the materialistic paradigm. And that was back in the 60s, and it's continuing on in science. Sorry to say the Q word. I hate it too. I hate when people use the Q word. Please don't hate on me. Anything, when anyone says anything, quantum money manifestation, like I get it. It's horrendous. I hate that. However, there's a reason that people do use that phrase, because that experiment in the 60s and 70s did kind of rip a hole in the materialist paradigm at the time. Now, I'm not an expert on science, but I'm pretty sure there's even more mind-bending experiments happening now since it's 50 years later. So too often, scientists mistake the transrational for the pre-rational, reducing it to superstition or myth or magical thinking, when in fact they're two very different things. Reality includes pre-rational aspects, rational aspects, and transrational aspects. And maturity means integrating all three. Science alone can't explain why the universe exists. It can't fully capture love or gratitude or awe. Yet these are fundamental human experiences. Even in human design, the system's first teacher, Alan Krakauer, spoke about the influence of neutrinos back in the late 1980s. At the time, it seemed very far-fetched, but many of his claims have since kind of been echoed in actual neutrino research. Ultimately, even if we lack a known causal mechanism, the subjective resonance that these systems create for people cannot be ignored. Astrology has remained relevant for millennia, and it's not going anywhere. As Ernst Wilhelm said, both human design and astrology are forms of Jyotish, sciences of the lights in the sky. They are both the same kind of science. These systems live outside the traditional scientific paradigm. They're not meant to be measured with a ruler. They work through subjective insight, the lived human experience. Number 2, confirmation bias. People just believe what they're told, and it's Barnum statements and it's generic statements that could apply to anyone. I get it. It's a valid concern. I very much thought the same thing. My personal experience says otherwise. When I first heard a talk on the projector type in human design, I actually cried, I laughed, I felt a huge sense of relief, genuinely, because every word out of that talk completely resonated. It felt like someone was finally putting my inner life into words. It wasn't because I believed it. I believed it because it was already true within my experience before I have even discovered this system. This system put words to my experience, which resonated so highly that I did have a big emotional reaction, because it's like a huge click. It's a rare moment. I don't mean to hype that up. I don't get many moments like that in life, but that was certainly one of them. And that's what led me to diving deep into this system, despite my initial skepticism. So, of course, after learning more, I did begin following the general advice given for the projector types, not out of blind faith, but because it aligned with the way I had always moved through the world. It was a rational explanation of an intuitive inner experience that I sort of knew beforehand. And then this system kind of gave words to it, which was very interesting, very interesting. And that's a story that I've heard countless times from other people encountering human design or even their astrological birth chart for the first time. It's deeply validating in a way that other systems aren't. So before diving into these systems, I'd already done years of introspection and personal development in my early 20s. I was doing psychological metrics, strengths assessments, values assessments, scientifically researched positive psychology. I was very much into a lot of the positive psychology movement, discovering strengths, values, weaknesses, sense of mission statement, nothing completely out there, just something nice, grounded, practical to help me understand myself in my early 20s. Only years later, when I was really getting into everything, was I shocked to find that astrology actually echoed many of the same truths that I had found through Western psychology and other personality metrics and assessments. So even a few years ago, I would have said astrology was nonsense, but it's only after what I was learning about my chart and how that reflected in my previous introspection that the two really synchronized very well that I had to take it seriously. So when you discover, for example, what it means to have the moon in Scorpio in the 7th house, it resonated so precisely that I could no longer dismiss astrology as vague or meaningless. You should have seen my face when I learned that my natal Jupiter, which is the positive planet associated with expansion, was placed in the Vedic nakshatra, the subdivision of the fixed stars called Shravana. And Shravana's symbol is an ear, and it is associated with listening, sound, music, hearing. And since I was about 15 years old, I've been doing audio engineering, sound engineering, guitar, music. So it was a very specific match, which led me to pay extreme attention to the nakshatra symbolism in the Vedic system. It was too on the nose to be coincidental. There was also a time when a Vedic astrologer, without knowing much about me at all, had a guess that I was interested in more progressive types of guitar playing. Now, he only knew that I was into music. I didn't say that I played guitar. I didn't say anything else. I just said I was interested in music. I wanted to keep the information as limited as possible. This guy, through whatever means, somehow had an accurate guess that I was into progressive types of guitar, which is completely true. I love prog rock and the 70s progressive rock and been playing electric guitar since I'm 10. So obviously when something that accurate hits you, based on the information of your time, date, and place of birth, kind of shatters your illusions about this being vague or Barnum statements or, oh, it could apply to anyone. It just got rid of that doubt for me. So this isn't blind acceptance, it's recognition. And it's not really fair to say that it's all Barnum generic statements, because having an Aries ascendant with the ruler of the 8th house conjunct the moon, trine Saturn in the 11th house is not a generic Barnum statement. Neither is being a single definition splenic projector with a 5-1 profile and a personality sun in gate 31, line 6 in the human design system. That's a relatively simple description from human design. The possible combinations in both astrology and human design are essentially infinite. The more nuance you add, the less likely it is that someone is simply being tricked by vague generalities. Number 3, inaccessibility and elitism. I definitely understand this critique too. These systems can feel inaccessible, maybe slightly elitist, especially when framed in very dense jargon or gate-kept by the so-called experts. But that's also true of any advanced field of skill or knowledge, whether it's neuroscience or medicine or physics or the trades. In Vedic tradition, there's an old saying that Jyotish takes several lifetimes to learn. That's how deep and complex it can get. Human design, in my opinion, is no different. There's years of study and lived experience which are often required to give truly useful insights. Does that make them elitist? Not necessarily. The real intention behind these systems is to help people, not to keep them out. The growing human design and astrology communities are actively working to make the teachings more accessible, practical, and inclusive without watering them down. So it's the same with academia. Knowledge takes time. Doesn't mean that it's exclusive or elitist. It means it's valuable. And like any valuable thing, it takes effort to understand. Number 4, commercial exploitation. The hippies are just scammers, that they're just scamming people, and they're grifters, and they're doing it for money. This one doesn't make any sense if you actually think about it. If astrologers or human design practitioners or anyone in the counseling, guiding, advising professions were just out to scam people, they've seriously chosen one of the least effective ways to do it. If they were really grifters, they'd be launching meme coins or manipulating markets or scamming boomers out of their retirement funds using AI. There's just better ways to do it. Most of the people in these spaces, whether they're astrologers, human design guides, coaches, therapists, any sort of personal growth service, they're in it because they're genuinely passionate about the subject and they want to pursue something meaningful for their own career that's helped them along their way. They've studied their field, their specific niche for years, often because it changed their own lives, and now they want to help others with it, just like therapists, counselors, or advisors in any other field. You could just as easily say the same thing about corporate consultants, but no one accuses them of running scams. So yes, people charge money because that's how life works. Every business, from tech startups to tarot readers to window cleaners to massage therapists, they all need money to be sustainable, obviously. Calling someone a scammer simply for charging a fee is kind of an outdated projection, especially when the work they're offering is transformative for so many. We don't call it a grift when someone shows up to work in a suit and a tie, but they're still offering a product, a service, or their time in exchange for money. So why does it suddenly become suspect when it involves personal or spiritual growth? With that out of the way, let's compare the charts in depth.